We've given you an awful lot of information already about misconceptions and things that guide people through this recruiting process. Now that we've got that stuff out of the way, let's move on to the next phase, which is how to get recruited. There's several things that are very important, in our opinion, to help you get recruited. So let's get into it because it's a pretty good topic. Number one is the list. What is the list? Well, think about it this way. Moms, dads, when you go to the grocery store, if you go with a shopping list, what happens? You come out of the grocery store with everything that was on your list. If you needed eggs, you remember to get eggs. If you needed milk, you remember to get milk. But what happens when you go to the grocery store without a list? Chances are you forget the eggs, you forget the milk, and you come out of there with 2 or 3 things that are marketed really well that sort of struck your fancy while you're walking up and down the aisle. One of the things that always happens to me when I go without a list is I will get home and unpack something like a box of Twinkies that I certainly didn't intend to buy when I went to the store, but before you know it, because that box of Twinkies just looks so attractive, I end up grabbing it and throwing it in the cart. So how does that list translate? It's important for you to understand. Each player has a list of things that they are looking for. As you're working this process, you need to know what it is that you are looking for. So what your list should include are the things that are most important to you. Each player should take some time and sit down with a piece of paper and start to make a list of the things that they're looking for in a school that's going to be of interest to them. What are those things? Depends. Each player is going to be different. Now, I think there are some things that ring true for most kids. How far is too far? How close is too close? How strong is the university's academic program that I'm interested in? What's the balance between academics and athletics? There's a lot of things that I think you should be paying attention to. But here's what I would tell every single player before you do anything else: know what you're looking for. Know why you're going to the grocery store and what it is that you expect to bring home. If there's something that's really important to you and the schools that you're looking at don't offer those things, then investing a lot of time on those schools is just plain dumb. If you want to be a doctor or a nurse or something else that is very academically challenging, sometimes that means that certain softball programs are not going to be a good fit for you. And so we want you to think about what it is that you're looking for. Now, here's the first thing I tell kids. Make sure that it's your list and not the list that you think your parents want you to write. Why is that important? Because when you get to school, you're the one that lives there. Now, an awful lot of players spend a lot of time working on their list, trying to think of the things that they expect other people to want to see. They don't want to make mom and dad mad, so they put something on there because they know it's important to mom or dad that's really not very important to them. Well, if you're using that list to guide your decision making, we need to make sure that it's representative of what it is that you are truly looking for in a school. Most players never get to this point. I will say that 90% of the recruits that I have talked to in my career, which is several hundred players, when I sat down with them in the office asking, well, what are you looking for in a school? Most of the time, all I get back from them is a blank stare. There's no comprehension of why that list is important. And kids, it's just this simple. If you don't know what you're looking for, how are you ever going to know if you find it? Okay? Nobody buys a used car anymore without going and checking out the Carfax. Why? Because you want to know if that car is a good investment. Same thing for you as you start to look at schools. If you know what you're looking for, then you can find the school that matches up. And again, what's most important to each player is going to be different. Now, here's why the list is so important. If you're honest with yourself and you really do prioritize the top thing, the most important thing at the top of your list, and then work your way down, it's a roadmap to help you make sense out of this recruiting process. When you're looking at a school, if your most important thing is not offered at a school, it can't be the right school. Okay? No matter what the scorecard says at the end of the day, let's say you have 15 things on your list. As you're looking at your list and looking at a school, you look at line number 1, yes. Line number 2, no. Line number 3, maybe. Line number 4, yes, and on down the line. Then you have a scorecard. Let's say at the end, you've got 9 yeses, 2 no's, and a couple of maybes. Well, then the next step should be, let's answer the maybes. Find out for sure whether they're yeses or no's. But if it's a strong scorecard and it's 13 or 14 yeses and only a couple of no's, well, that's a school that you should invest a lot of time in investigating because it matches up with what you're looking for. If you get to the end of that scorecard and it's 3 yeses and 12 no's, you don't have to be a genius to figure out that that's probably not the right school for you. And again, why is that important? You only have so much time to work on finding the right school. Let's spend our time working on the schools that match up most with what we're looking for. If we do that, life's going to be a whole lot easier. And we want you to start early in that process because having that knowledge and having that information is going to go a long way. So now you've got a list. You know what schools match up with what you're looking for. You found the place that's the best fit for you. So once we've done that, now we want to start working on how to get recruited by that school and several others, because please don't put all your eggs in one basket. Even though you have a dream school, dreaming is great, but you still need to have a safety net or 2 or 3 of other schools that you're also interested in. So, how do you get recruited? There's a lot of things that you can do. We're going to talk about all of them, but here's number 1 on my list. You as a player have got to make up your mind that you're going to stand out from the crowd. You need to stand out in everything you do in the eyes of that college coach. Why is that so important? Well, once upon a time, I could stand up here and tell you, if you're a player that wants to play college softball, that there's an opportunity for you. And then something crazy happened. I don't know if it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but somewhere in that neighborhood, there ended up being a lot more players that want to play college softball than there are spots for them to play. The days of every player being able to find a place on a team are long gone. So it's a very competitive environment, and you need to make sure that you're going to stand out. So how do you stand out? Number 1, in your correspondence. Make sure that everything that you send to a college coach says something about you that's different, that is unique, that makes you different than the hundreds of other emails they're getting. Make sure that you're talking about them specifically and about their school specifically. Do a little bit of research so you can talk about a coach and their name. If a coach just had a baby or just won a conference championship or had a player that got a great academic award, knowing those kinds of things and being able to include that in your correspondence makes you stand out, much more so than the kids that send the Dear Coach emails. Okay? Also in your performance. This is very, very important. One of the things that I think is unfortunate now is so many of you play so many games that you play games where you don't really give it all you've got. You kind of coast through some games. You kind of take it easy. You find yourself just sort of going through the motions. And that is absolutely a terrible strategy. When you're out there playing, you never know when a college coach is watching. You never know when somebody is watching for a college coach. And so because of that, every time you go to the ballpark, you need to be on point from the minute you get out of the car until the minute you get back into the car. In your performance, what does it mean to stand out from the crowd? You need to dive, you need to hustle, you need to slide. You need to play with confidence. You need to play with aggression. And you have got to communicate. You've got to be that player that stands out. We want you to understand you only get one chance to make a first impression, and if that first impression is weak, that college coach already comes away from that first interaction wondering whether you're a player that they really want to recruit. So standing out from the crowd is crucial. If you go to a camp on a college campus, you've got to make sure you stand out from the rest of the players that are there. Some of the big schools have camps that might have 400 or 500 kids in attendance. Well, every one of those 500 kids wants to go to that school. That's why they're at that camp. When one of those coaches asks for a volunteer, be the first person in line. Jump right up there and make sure that you get noticed. Ask questions. Look them in the eye. Interact with them in a way that's going to make an impression upon them. You have got to do these things if you want to have a chance to get recruited. Again, you only have one chance to make a first impression. Make a strong one. If you're not making a good first impression, the reality of it is that you're making a bad impression, and that does not do you any good. It's up to you to step outside of your comfort zone, to step outside of human nature, and be that person. What do most kids do when they go to a camp or have a chance to interact with a college coach? They shrink, they fall back, They blend in, and that's a really bad idea. Remember, it's competitive. You've got to stand out. You've got to do something that makes them remember you outside of and instead of the couple of hundred other people that they're looking at. So now that we're going to make up our mind to stand out from the crowd, then we need to know what the tools are that we're going to use and the toolbox that we need to fill with things that will work for us as we want to work through this recruiting process. Number one, and for most of us, the first thing that we are going to send to a college coach is an email. That email has to be very specific in its purpose. We've got to make sure that, again, it stands out from the crowd. So it needs to include things that are going to make you unique. We want to make sure that we do a couple of things that are very common sense, but not necessarily common practice. Be sure you have all the correct information. Make sure you know the coach's name, how to spell the coach's name. Those kinds of things are very, very important. Remember, mass emails and form letter type emails definitely get canned before they do you much good. If you send an email to a coach that's titled Dear Coach and has nothing after it, I guarantee you that college coach has hit delete and dropped that email into the trash can as soon as they got to that part of your email. Whatever you had after that has no value. So it needs to be Dear Coach Atchison or Dear Coach Torrey, because if you've worked at a camp with me or come to one of our camps, you know that that's what the kids would call me. So I would expect that you would feel comfortable doing that. And that's got my attention. I'm likely to now read the rest of your email. The rest of that email should say something that tells me that you know something about my school. If we've accomplished something great, if something big has happened, if some player has received some award, a mention of those kinds of things tells me that you are definitely interested in our school. Now, I'm going to tell you a horror story because I think it's important for you to understand that this kind of thing happens. When I was coaching at Tennessee Tech, I used to get letters all the time, and that tells you how old I am because we actually got letters, but also emails. And quite often I would get one that would say something like, Dear Coach Dabney, I love Tennessee Tech. Or I would get the flip of it, which was, Dear Coach Atchison, I love Tennessee State. Now, why did that happen? Because we were right next to each other on the alphabetical list of Division I schools. And players were in such a rush to send their emails out to everybody that they wouldn't pay attention to making sure they updated all the lines in the letter. And so, being the person that I am, when I got one of those, I would always respond with something along the lines of, Dear Sally, thanks for your interest in Tennessee Tech. Just so you know, Coach Dabney coaches at Tennessee State. If you would like me to forward your email to him, I'd be happy to do that because we're good friends. Now, invariably, I'd get an email or a contact back from that player, apologizing profusely. I'm so sorry. And I would always tell them, I was just trying to call this to your attention because I want you to be aware that you made a very fundamental mistake so that you can clean that up. So be careful with the cut and paste if you're trying to do the mass emails. But your email has got to make you stand out from the crowd. The next piece of the puzzle is the phone call. Phone calls can be totally intimidating for you as a player. Whether you're getting called by a college coach or you are calling a college coach, here's some things that you want to make sure that you're doing to prepare yourself. You need to have a script. You need to have things written down on a 3x5 card that you can keep in your pocket or in your messages area on your phone. So when the phone rings and it's that college coach, you've got some things to talk about. And those things should show that you're truly interested in that school. Just like the email, the phone call is your chance to make a gigantic impression on that college coach. If you say something that's clearly indicating that you have spent some time learning about that school, learning about that coach, and learning about that program, that's a really positive impression. If you sit silently on the phone expecting the college coach to carry the conversation, that makes a negative impression. Remember, you're trying to show that college coach that you're somebody that they want to spend time with, that you're somebody that they want to invest time and money in, and you have got to project a good impression. You've got to let that coach know something about you, and you've got to, again, step outside your comfort zone and prepare yourself to have a conversation with a college coach. I've heard kids very often talk about how they'll try to call a college coach and they're so relieved because they get voicemail instead of having to talk to a coach. Well, if you leave a message, make sure you're leaving an intelligent message that makes a good impression. Okay? It's important. The phone calls are crucial. And as we'll talk about later with the new recruiting rules, when those phone calls start to happen, it's going to be even more pressure-packed because the time frame is going to force you to be in a position to have more information readily available and to make a bigger impression. Next thing up is your resume, or what we now really think about as a profile page. Every player has a profile page. Every team typically has profile pages that they give to college coaches at events. Here's something about that resume that we want you to do and make sure that you do well. Include all the things that you can without including superfluous stuff that's not that important. So it's a very simple list. Again, it's common sense, but common sense and common practice are not always the same thing. Make sure you're including the things that you see here on this file. Your name, graduation date, those are probably the two most important things. Then your home address, email addresses, phone numbers, home and cell, parent phone numbers, so that when that college coach's phone rings, they have an idea who it is that's calling them. I would include your parents' names. If you're from a non-traditional family where you have a dad and a stepmom and a mom and a stepdad, include all those names. If the person who you live with is your grandparent, make sure that that's spelled out so that people understand. Okay? It's not anything that's a plus or a minus or a negative, but if that college coach is reaching out to contact someone, they want to know for sure exactly who it is that they should be talking to. If you're involved in things like service clubs, you're involved in your church, you've been on mission trips, anything that stands out that makes you a unique individual, I think you want to mention all those things. And I would rarely include letters of recommendation, but if you want to do that, you can. Just make sure that they come from credible sources and people who really know something about your softball skills. Other important things that are absolutely crucial that you include: academic information. If you've taken the tests, ACT or SAT, pre-SAT or pre-ACT, make sure you're including that information. Your grade point information, AP courses, dual credit, honors classes, anything that you have accomplished academically that makes you stand out, that gives a good impression or makes a good showing of what you've done in the classroom. And obviously, whatever it is that you're planning on studying in school. If you're undecided about what you want your college major to be, that's okay. You can mention that too. But if you're hard and fast and set on something specific and you know that's what you want to do in school, I would include that information because, again, some schools and some academic programs and some softball programs don't mesh that well, and it's useful information. And then obviously, athletic information. Recent highlights. It's not that important to most college coaches what you did in 10 and under, in some cases 12 and under, but they do want to know the recent highlights. They want to know how to get in touch with your coaches, so your travel ball coach and your high school coach, contact information, emails, and phone numbers. If you're going to camps, if you're going to clinics, if you're going to lessons, you want to include that information. Where and when, who your hitting instructor is, who your pitching coach is, those kinds of things, and again, contact information for all those people. If we include all that information, you make a good impression on the college coach because the college coach can then reach out to the people they need to get to know more about you. A couple of things that we talk about all the time, though. We have to make sure that when you're putting this profile page together, remember, you're not selling a used car. Don't oversell the good and try to hide the not so good. It makes a really bad impression. So when you're putting that resume together, when you're creating your profile page, make sure that it's accurate. If you're not completely sure about something, make sure you check and double check to make sure that the information you're giving is accurate, whether it's academic information or athletic information. There's a lot of times that a very good player will send a very cloudy message because there's some inaccuracies in the information that they send. If you're in a school that emphasizes academics first and you're in a lot of very demanding classes, I would make that a point. Just like if I'm in a school that offers a lot of other classes that maybe are a little bit less academic, I would make sure that that was clear too. If your grade point average is 4.0, but you're only taking one truly academic class, I think college coaches need to have that information. And your athletic information needs to be accurate. If you were All-State, make sure that if you say that you were All-State, make sure that it's true. If you're talking about awards that you've received, make sure that it's accurate. If you're talking about your speeds or your bat speeds or your spin rate or anything else for a player, make sure that it's accurate. If you're not 100% sure, go to the sources and find out. But make sure before you send that profile page to that college coach that you have faith that what you're sending them is true. Being honest is the most important thing you can be. You've got to send a really good impression to those college coaches. Be real. Let them know about your strengths and your weaknesses. If something has happened in your life that you wish hadn't happened but you've learned from it, hiding it is really bad. Being honest about it is good. There's nothing wrong with making a mistake when you're young, but own up to it and let that college coach know, okay, I got in trouble when I was a freshman and I screwed up, but I fixed it. Boom. Versus hoping that college coach never finds out that you screwed up when you were a freshman and then thinks that you were deceiving them or lying to them. Because ultimately, they will find out. How will they find out? Because college coaches, before they make scholarship offers, start to look like FBI agents as much as they do college coaches. They are going to dig and poke and prod. You're going to have your social media history checked. You're going to have coaches that will watch you in the dugout versus watching you on the field. You'll have college coaches that will follow you in from the parking lot at the start of a tournament to see how you're acting. And if you sell yourself as being this great, hard-working, dedicated player, and that coach is 20 feet behind you walking in from the parking lot, and you're acting like you're doing mom and dad a favor being there that day, they're going to figure out that there was some dishonesty in that profile page. So, and again, if you aren't sure, double check. Don't send something out hoping that it's true. Everything that you send out, you should know it's true. So, now here's a good example. It's a little bit old, but it's one that I received when I was still coaching at Tennessee Tech. We blocked out all the information so you wouldn't know exactly who this player is. But again, her personal information, her education, her high school sports, her community service, playing experience, highlights, contact information. All on one page. Boom. Rock solid, great profile page. And I love the fact that there's a picture on it because sometimes when you're at the ballpark, players start to blend together. So knowing what a player looks like and having a headshot of them is a really good thing to have. Next up is the skills video. You have to have a skills video. I hope that that's very clear. You need to have something to send a college coach that gives them a visual impression of your skills. The skills video should be included in every correspondence that you send. Every single email that you send to a college coach should have a link to your skills video. It's crucial because that college coach needs to be able to see what your skills look like. Even if they're already familiar with you as a player, reminding them and showing them as you grow and improve is an important thing. And it's just as important for them to be able to look at that video in future correspondence to keep reminding themselves of your skill level. There's some things about a skills video that we think are important for you to be aware of. Number one, you can create your own skills video. But there's things for you to remember if you're doing that. You have to have a high enough quality camera that the video that you're sending to that college coach is clear and easy to read. Because most of us don't have the equipment, I do think it's a wise investment for many people to invest in getting a skills video done. The reality of it is, though, that there are a wide variety of different people that you can contact about doing a skills video, and the quality of what they will produce for you is going to vary greatly. If you send your own homemade skills video, do the best you can to make sure that the frame is good, that you can see the player's actions, you can see it and understand what they are trying to demonstrate. If you want to contact somebody about doing a skills video for you, those of you that are here in the Atlanta area, Fast Pitch Prep does do skills videos. You can contact us at fastpitchprep@gmail.com. If you want to check out other people that do them, there are many photographers and people that are willing to undertake the idea of creating a skills video. Again, just understand that the quality of the video is important and that the college coach needs to be able to clearly see your skills. So, I've said skills about a dozen times already. Here's why that's so important. A skills video is what you want to send to the college coaches, not game footage. please don't videotape an entire game of your daughter playing and then send a 3-hour video to a college coach and think that they're going to have time to watch the entire thing to pick out the 4 or 5 plays that your daughter might make in that game. So when we talk about a skills video, what we're talking about is watching her hit, whether it's on a tee or front toss or off the machine, and about 10 or 15 swings. The view that you should include is from the side, so that as your player is standing at the plate, the camera is focused on them on the front side of their body, so the coach can see all the movements that they make as they go through their swing. The secondary view that you would like to have is from behind the hitter, so that the coach can see where the ball goes and the flight of the ball. If it's a position player, we want to make sure that we get some action of them fielding and throwing, catching the ball and throwing, and making sure that we include a big enough frame that we can see the play and the throw, and also some close enough that we can see up close and personal of the technique that that player is using. And the most important one for the pitcher is simple. Just like the hitter needs to have a side view, the pitcher needs to have a side view. So if it's a right-handed pitcher, the camera would be on the third base side. So as she's going through her motion, her whole motion is in the frame. And then the secondary view would be from behind the pitcher, so you can see the flight of the ball to home plate. Again, skills footage is very important because it gives a coach a quick look at what your player is capable of doing. It should be fairly short. If she's a hitter, we need to see maybe 10 swings. If she's a fielder, maybe 6 ground balls. If she's an outfielder, 2 or 3 or 4 fly balls. If she's a pitcher, 1 or 2 of every pitch. If the video gets too long, the college coach is less likely to watch it. Now, what we do for our clients is we cut their videos up into sections so a college coach can watch each part as they see fit. So if they want to click on hitting, they can see the hitting part and not have to watch the rest of the video to find it. So that's a trick you can use if you choose to. Once you've created this skills video, there's some absolutes that you want to pay attention to. Number 1, we don't need any Steven Spielberg, super special effects, stop action, slow motion, any of those kinds of things. In your skills video, we want something that's easy for that college coach to watch, because it's probably going to be on YouTube. They're going to watch it on their computer, and then they have the ability to stop, start, slow-mo, any of those kinds of things. So don't do that for them. And also, we don't need any big breaks or special effects in between. There's one company that does a high-quality skills video, but they are so wrapped up in showing off all the cool things that they can do that I think it does detract from the quality of the video from a college coach's perspective. When I sit down to watch a player's video, I'm pretty sure that when I see her with a bat in her hands, she's going to hit or bunt. I don't need some sort of panel that flies in with all kinds of sound effects and then flies out with a slide that says hitting, and then a cut to her hitting. I'm pretty sure I've figured that out already. And the same thing's true of fielding, pitching, whatever that skill might be. Next absolute, do not include music. This is shocking for some players to hear, but sweetheart, I'm just going to tell you, just because it pumps you up, just because it gets you excited, just because it has you dying to go to the ballpark and play, doesn't mean it's going to have that same effect on a college coach. And here's what you have to remember. Most of the college coaches that you're sending this video to are old. Some very old, but definitely older than you. And very few of them are going to have the same taste and the same perspective on music. If I'm looking at your skills video and you send me a video that's loaded with rap music, I'm going to have an impression of you that you don't want me to have. Why? Because I hate it. Period. Now, is that right, wrong? Doesn't matter. Who are you trying to impress? The person that's listening to your or watching your video. And if you put some music in there that I find offensive, chances are I'm going to stop watching your video because I've already made a judgment about you. Okay? And just because you like it doesn't mean that somebody else will. And so the music in the background is a really bad idea. But most importantly, here's what we want you to think about. Whether you produce this video yourself or you hire somebody to do it, what the college coach is really watching is you and your ability. The skills video itself is designed to showcase what you can and cannot do. If you make a mistake, don't edit it out. Just let it go, show how you bounce back, show how you react, and get right back in there and make the next play. No one expects you to be perfect. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about one video that I received that just cracks me up even still thinking about it. Girl sent me a video that was about 4 minutes long, and in that 4-minute video, she was in 7 different uniforms. What does that translate into? She had to go to the park 7 different times to get 4 minutes of what she thought was good enough skills video to send to me. What impression does that make? Not a positive one. So I would have much rather had her send me the first video where maybe she had a couple of errors mixed in, but I could have seen how she reacted. And remember, we're evaluating your ability more than the quality of the video, but the quality of the video has to be good enough that we can see what you're really capable of doing. So I did get this video. Watch it for a second and tell me what you think.
65, 67, 68. Oh, that one didn't come up. 67, 66.
Probably get a better reading if you put it in my Nothing?
64, 67.
You get her pitching and then score?
Yeah, she's pitching, throwing to you. No, nothing. 63. 28, 31, 34, 35. That
Car.
Tar?
Car.
Car. Oh, the car. There's a car coming. That's why. Okay. Let's wait. Hold off. Car's coming. Pause it.
Yes, I did actually receive this video. Now, we can agree on one thing. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. But when somebody sends me a video like this, where they're portraying themselves to be a pitcher who can throw the ball 67 miles an hour, and I can see in the video that the ball has an arc on it, I'm pretty sure it's not 67 miles an hour because I've seen 67 miles an hour live. So if you're going to try to do something creative, is it creative? Of course it's creative. But what it really does is raise more questions than answers, because a ball that has an arc on it does not go 67 miles an hour. Now, my guess is that this roadside speed gun is capable of testing kilometers per hour and miles per hour, and somebody had the brilliant idea of setting it to kilometers per hour so that the metric system could fool us into thinking she was throwing the ball harder than she really is. As we mentioned earlier, I promise you, when college coaches get close to offering a scholarship, they're more like FBI agents than coaches. They're going to do their homework. So, a couple other things for you to think about in this whole getting recruited project. I hear this from players all the time. Well, I don't want to call that coach too often. They're going to think I'm a pest. Well, if I send him an email every week, he's going to think I'm a pest. If I keep bothering him, he's going to get mad at me. If I keep bothering him, they're going to stop being interested in me. Here's what I'm going to tell you. In my career, I've exactly had one player who crossed the line, what I call the Stalker Line. She did become a pest, and it's unfortunate, but the reason that she crossed that line was well intended, but just one of those things that when you look back on it, doesn't necessarily make that much sense. So, these are 2 souvenir balls that this player sent me. The note attached says, "Hey, Coach Atchison, here are the home run balls that I hit this weekend." I kept the real home run balls. So, she sent me 2 replicas of the home run balls that she hit. Okay. Now, typically when a player gets to be 16, 17 years old, the keeping of home run balls is sort of a kiss of death moment anyhow. But, okay, she thought it was important to send these to me. I believe I could have stats like this for the Eagles too, and beyond with your coaching. So your question is, how did this poor girl cross the Stalker Line? Well, what you can't see in this picture is that in the box that she sent me these 2 souvenir replica balls was a bag of the shiny confetti stuff that when I opened the box scattered all over my office. So now, on top of the fact that I've got 2 balls that I'm not sure I needed, I've got a mess in my office that I've got to clean up, or I've got to live with it until the custodians come around, and who knows when that's going to be. So that's when she crossed the stalker line. When I had to go find a custodian to ask them to come vacuum my office, I decided that I was aggravated with this player. So the good news is we used both of those balls for batting practice and got a lot of mileage out of them. So don't cross the stalker line. So a couple other things we want you to be paying attention to and how to get recruited. For those of you that don't know, just very recently the NCAA changed legislation that now forbids what used to be called early recruiting. From this point forward, a player can only be contacted for the purposes of recruitment after September 1st of their junior year. Now, we all know not that long ago that very young players were being recruited. Now, this rule in some ways does put to end the idea of recruiting very young players. But those changes also create some different kinds of challenges for us as players that want to be recruited. It puts a lot more pressure on you to do all the things we've talked about so far and to do them well. You need to have all this information in those coaches' hands as often and as early as you possibly can so that when it gets to September 1st of your junior year, you're already on their radar and they're already familiar with you as a player. They cannot contact you. They cannot contact you through your coach. They cannot use a third party to send a message to you, but they are watching. So you need to have a video that piques their interest. You need to send them a good resume. You need to send them quality emails that pique their interest and get them to pay attention to you. These are major, major changes to the game of softball. Good news is I think it is a step in the right direction and solves a lot of problems where we've seen players as young as middle school age being recruited. We get to turn the clock back and start to recruit players at an older age, but I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure on those players when we get to that time of September 1st of their junior year. So, whatever your age is, if you want to be recruited, one of the secrets to getting recruited is getting started. If you are not working hard at this, you cannot expect good results. If you're not sending the emails, if you're not sending the profiles, if you're not sending the skills video, coaches don't know who you are. Coaches never go to the ballpark and randomly find a player. Every time I ever went to the ballpark to watch a game, I went there to watch a specific player, someone who had piqued my interest, somebody who convinced me that they were the player that I needed to see. It's important for you to do the same thing. Now, periodically, while I was there watching a player who had contacted me, I would see a player who I was not aware of, but that was just random good fortune for that player. It had nothing to do with anything that they had done. So, you need to get started, and you need to get started now. If you feel like you're late into this process, I would tell you it's still not too late, but you need to get going. So get that stuff together, get your email ready to send, get your video ready to send, and start working on this process as quick as you can. We talked a little bit about the list. The list should be giving you some guidance about things that you're looking for in a school and the kinds of schools that you should be looking for. So now let's say you've gotten to the point where a coach has expressed interest in you. They want you to visit their campus. There's 2 different types of visits. One is an official visit. On an official visit, which only can happen during your senior year of high school, you make a visit to the college campus, and on that visit, the school can pay for everything. They can pay for your transportation, they can pay for your housing, they can pay for your meals. It's very much an opportunity for that college coach to show you a lot of love and to show a lot of interest in you. But those only happen during your senior year and typically now are much more of a victory lap for you because you've already decided you're going to that school than it is part of the recruiting process. Now, I know we just said that September 1st of your junior year is the first time that coaches can contact you, but here's what's going to happen on September 1st of your junior year. They're going to expect you to make a decision during your junior year. So even though you've got more time to get seen and to be recruited, once that recruitment process starts, it's going to move very quickly. So I still think the official visit's going to remain much more of that victory lap celebration idea. The unofficial visits are going to remain to be very important. They've been crucial in recruiting in the past, and they're going to continue to be even with the new legislation. You can make an unlimited number of unofficial visits. So if you've got a lot of schools that you're interested in, you can visit them. Now, you can make unofficial visits before September 1st of your junior year, but while you're there, that college coach cannot have recruiting specific conversations with you. They can show you around, they can give you a tour, you can see the facilities, you can watch a practice, but they cannot sit in the office with you and say, Sally, I think you're an amazing player, I want to offer you a scholarship. So unofficial visits are still going to be important. You can make unofficial visits at any time, and if there's schools that you're interested in, even though it's before September 1st of your junior year, get out there and see them. And while you're there, understand a couple of things. On an unofficial visit, the school is allowed to pay for nothing. The only thing that they can provide you are tickets to certain sporting events, and there's a lot of rules that they have to follow to arrange for that to happen. They can't buy you a Coke, they can't give you a bottle of water, they can't buy you a hot dog, they can't take you to lunch, they can't do any of those things. If you're on an unofficial visit and a school does those kinds of things for you, I would thank them and get out of Dodge, because eventually it's going to find out that they're cheating, and you're going to be in trouble too. Okay? And while you're doing an unofficial visit, try to arrange to do everything you possibly can. See the campus, go to a class, meet with the people in academics, meet with the people in financial aid, all those kinds of things. And part of why the unofficial visit is so important to you as a player or as a parent of a player, it gives you a chance to get a feel up close and personal if this school that hopefully matched up with so many things on your list truly matches up and is a good opportunity. So visits are a very important part of the recruiting process. So a couple other things about how to get recruited. Number one, and this is very, very important, you should expect to do everything yourself. I hear this all the time. Well, my travel ball coach let me down. My high school coach let me down. My recruiting guy let me down. They didn't get my profile done. They didn't get my video done. They didn't, like it's always somebody else's fault. Well, I tell players all the time, it's your eligibility and it's your recruitment. It's up to you to make sure that everything gets done. Don't assume that anything has or will be done. Make sure yourself. And it's important that you follow up and guarantee yourself the peace of mind of knowing that your information is getting to the people that you need it to get to. If you count on other people to do really important things for you, like this part of the recruiting process, I think you're going to be in big trouble. And the second thing where effort is important is work hard at making a good decision. Work your list. Pay attention, ask good questions, understand something. I believe choosing the school you're going to attend is the most important decision you're ever going to make, period. Now, I always get this, well, what about getting married? Yes, I think getting married is probably more important on the grand scheme of things, but I probably know 500 married couples, and I think 495 of them met each other in college. So the choice that you make, the school that you choose, could have that kind of impact on the rest of your life. You could meet the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with at the school that you choose. So invest real thought. Work hard at making a good decision. Don't assume anything. It's up to you, because it's your life that's going to be impacted. Quick talk about recruiting services. We just talked about you need to do everything yourself. I believe that that's true. Now, recruiting services can serve a purpose, but there's pluses and minuses to everything that we talk about. I do believe that some recruiting services are well-intended and mean to do a very good job for you, and they mean to deliver on their promise to you. Some recruiting services, though, are expensive. And if you start to look at spending a lot of money to use a recruiting service, make sure that what that service is providing for you are things that you can't do yourself. What do I mean? You've got a ton of money and you're too lazy to do the work yourself. Recruiting services are great for you. You feel like you don't have the ability or the skills to do the things that need to be done, and you can afford it. Recruiting services are good for you. They're going to offer something to certain people, but they are not an end-all, be-all. If you count on a recruiting service to get you a scholarship, I think you're going to be disappointed. And there's some things that you need to know about how typical recruiting services work. They're great for mass marketing. They're great for getting your information in front of a ton of schools. But if you've been paying attention, which I hope you have, you know from the list that you've created, you don't want to have your information sent to a ton of schools. You want to have your information sent to the targeted schools that make sense for you. You want to send your information to the 5 or 6 or 7 schools that are a great fit for you. You don't want to send it to 500 schools when you have no interest in 495 of them. That's just not a logical way to approach the process. And so if you're not interested in a school, I don't think that it makes sense for somebody to send your information to them. It just is a waste of everybody's time. And it's also a great tool, it can be a great tool for accessing information. Many of the recruiting services, when they create a profile page for you or a website for you, have a system in place where you get notification that a school has looked at your page. And that can be good news and bad news. Don't always put too much stock in the fact that a college coach has looked at your site. They might be looking at your site just to remind themselves of who you are. They might have no more interest in that than just to refresh their memory about who you are. I've also heard of schools where they will have a graduate assistant or a student assistant respond to all of those in the hope that you think that they're interested in you as a player, so you'll come to their camp and invest money in coming to their camps so that they make more money off of the camps that they offer. So it does give you some information, it gives you some feedback, but again, make sure that you're thinking about what that recruiting service is going to provide for you. Make sure that it makes sense that what you're getting out of it is worth the investment. So here's another chance for you to do a little bit more work that's going to help you make a great impression on college coaches. Camps sponsored by the schools you are interested in have become an absolute necessity in the recruiting process. If you are interested in a specific school and that school is running a camp, you need to be there. It's crucial that you find a way to get there so that you can work with those coaches, you can give them an opportunity to work with you, and you can have an opportunity to make a great impression on them. Camps have become a crucial part of the recruiting process where they were not so much 10 years ago. Now if a school is offering a camp and you're interested in that school, I will tell you that it's the most important thing you can do to figure out a way to get there. If it means that you miss a tournament, if it means that you miss some games, if it means that you've got to figure out a way to come up with a couple extra dollars to make it affordable, it's up to you to figure out how to get that done. If you do not go to a camp on a college campus that's offered by those coaches, they believe that means that you're not interested in them or that you're more interested in somebody else. When I was coaching at Kennesaw State, we had a very strong summer camp coming up where we had a handful of really talented players that we were interested in recruiting. There was also another group of players that we were interested in recruiting that decided to go to a camp at Kentucky instead. Now, I don't think it was because they got confused and when they were looking through the websites, clicked on the Kentucky camp by accident. I think they thought that Kentucky would still be interested in them. And I understand why they're interested. It's a great school and a great program. But what ended up happening is we chose from the players who were at our camp, made our decisions, and made scholarship offers based on what those kids did in those couple of days. What did that mean for the kids who went to the Kentucky camp? They got left out. Now, the sad reality of it is, 4 or 5 days after the Kentucky camp was over, some of those kids were calling me trying to find out if I was still interested in them, and I had to tell them the truth. Thank you for your interest, but we've moved on to other players. And then in that conversation, trying to get them to understand that the impression they gave us was that we were not that important to them. Now, whether that's what they wanted to do or not, it's hard to say, but that's how most college coaches are going to process that information. So if the school you're interested in, number 1 on your list, number 2 on your list, number 3 on your list, make sure you get to their camps. Now, there's 2 other types of camps that we want to talk about because they also get thrown into the camp picture for recruiting. There are exposure camps, and exposure camps are different than the camps offered on a college campus. Now, sometimes they are offered on a college campus, which makes it a little bit more confusing, but the typical exposure camp is set up with a lot of colleges and a lot of players in one place at the same time. Some of them are pre-tournament camps, so before a big showcase, before a big event, they will get together and have a camp at that site. And that camp is designed to give players a chance to get in front of a lot of different college coaches. There's also some groups of what I call professional camp operators. These are people that run exposure camps, and that's their business. And if you're in business, I understand you're in business because you want to make a profit. Exposure camps are a very profitable venture for the people that have entered into them because they do get a lot of kids and a lot of coaches together. The problem with exposure camps is simple. We advertise that these coaches are going to be there, and someone from those schools will be. But it's not uncommon if they're advertising a College World Series caliber program that the coach who shows up there is not the head coach, maybe not even an assistant coach. It might be a grad assistant. It might be the director of softball operations. It might be a student assistant. It'll be somebody wearing the gear and somebody representing that school, but it's not somebody who's going to see you play in a camp and decide that they want to recruit you. So some of it is a little bit of a buyer beware kind of thing. Now, if you know for sure that a school that you're interested in is going to be represented at one of these exposure camps, that's great. But before you send in the check, call that coach and ask, hey, coach, are you going to be at this camp? I'm thinking about going there, but I only want to go if I know for sure you're going to be there. And we always want to be asking some questions. What's this camp going to really give me in return for my money? And some simple things. How many kids? How many coaches? Those kinds of things. And also we want you to be realistic about what types of schools you're hoping you're going to be seen by. We already know that kids dream the big dream. If you look at one of these exposure camps and you think it's worth investing $300, $400, $500, $600 to attend so that one of those big time schools can see you, remember that they might not be there to recruit and they might not be there to recruit you. So don't make that investment without doing some detective work to begin with. So last couple of things about how to get recruited. Number one, I always tell people this is a buyer beware endeavor. You have got to ask questions. You've got to read between the lines. Don't be afraid to ask the same question more than once. Take notes. If you call a coach one day and you ask them a question, note their answer, and the third or fourth or fifth time later that you talk to them, ask them the same question and make sure that the answer stays the same. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It shows due diligence. It shows that you are involved in this process and that you're working hard to make sure that you pick the right school. I will tell you this, be very, very careful of college coaches that promise you things that seem too good to be true. Again, common sense tells us if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. But we will have coaches who will promise things to players because they know it will incentivize them to choose their school. You'll be a starter as a freshman. You'll play all the time. You're going to be a 4-year starter, those kinds of things. Well, some coaches believe that when they say it, but here's what they really mean when they say it. I hope it will happen. I think it might happen. But what you need to understand as a player is no matter what they promise, it's not going to happen for you unless it's what's best for the team. If they promised you the starting shortstop job and when you get to school, they've got a better shortstop, who do you think's going to play? Right, the other player. So don't think that just because something was promised to you that that's a guarantee that it's going to come true. The reality of it is that for some college coaches, those promises are nothing more than a lure to try to get you to come to their school. A couple of things to avoid at all costs. Number one is never start your correspondence with a college coach talking about a scholarship. Why is that important? Because college coaches are early in the process not even sure they want you on their team. For you to walk through the door trying to figure out how much you're getting paid before they even know they want to hire you sends a really bad message. Ask your parents, and every time they've gone in for a job interview, they don't walk in, sit down for that interview, and start off with, how much are you going to pay me when you give me this job? They start off with convincing that person that they should get the job. And then as time unfolds, we get to the point where you're the right person, it's the right job, then we're going to figure out how much you're going to get paid. And if we jump into these conversations asking scholarship first questions, it turns a lot of college coaches off. So we want to make sure that we don't fall into that trap. Next up, I've got something that I think you're going to enjoy. It's called the 14 Commandments. Of course, it started off as the 10 Commandments, so the Moses picture made sense. It's grown to 14 Commandments because every time I go to the ballpark, I seem to see something else that happens that players should not do. So the 14 Commandments are things that players do on a regular basis at the ballpark that gets college coaches to cross them off the list almost right away. So here we go. Number 1. Never show disrespect to your teammates, coaches, parents, or umpires. Kids, I'm just going to tell you flat out, if you disrespect your parents, college coaches are going to drop you as fast as they possibly can. The reason that's important for you to understand is we all understand the typical 13, 14, 15-year-old player always thinks they know more than mom and dad, and they are very prone to show that displeasure in public. Here's what we want you to understand. College coaches get to pick the players that they coach, and they are not going to pick somebody who's going to be a pain in the butt. If you are disrespectful to your own parents, you can count on those college coaches not being interested in you. Perfect example. When I was sitting at a game in Colorado several years ago, I was there to watch a player that I was recruiting for our program at Tennessee Tech. Was sitting with Coach Mike Candrea from Arizona. He was there to watch a player from the other team. During the course of that game, she showed herself to be an amazing talent, but towards the end of the game, she acted very, very disrespectfully to her parents, and I could see the look on Coach Candrea's face immediately went from interested to shocked. He got up and left, and what do I know for sure? I don't think he ever went back. So if a school like Arizona can cross a player off of their list who's probably one of the best players in the country for disrespecting her parents, you know it happens all the time. The same is true for disrespecting your teammates, your coaches, or umpires. It shows a lack of maturity. And again, college coaches get to pick the players who are going to be on their roster. They're not going to pick somebody who's going to be a pain. And honestly, if you will disrespect your own parents, if you disrespect the coaches you're playing for now, what would lead a college coach to think that you won't be disrespectful to them too? So, commandment number 1, never show disrespect. Commandment number 2, and this is one that you all screw up all the time. Do not allow the score of the game to change the way you play it. I understand when you're getting crushed, when it's 8-0 in the second inning, when your pitcher's throwing nothing but meatballs up to the plate and the runs are crossing the plate faster than you can count, it's easy to get discouraged. But remember, we're not talking about whether or not your team wins or loses. What we're talking about is we're there to see you play. College coaches really don't care whether your team wins or loses. Honestly, they don't care how much success your team has. They're there specifically to watch you. And so if you decide to slack off because you're getting your butt kicked, if you decide to mail it in because your team's having a bad day, if you decide to play with a lackluster effort because your team's not performing well or you might not win the game, you are doing yourself a terrible, terrible disservice. Moping around, playing lazy, just because your team is losing sends a very strong and very negative message. No matter what, understand this. College coaches are there to see you. And honestly, how you respond and the way you play when your team is getting its butt kicked tells that college coach a lot. If you're the person who stays upbeat, who keeps playing hard, who goes out there and is still diving for balls and still playing like their hair's on fire, that college coach is going to notice because they see the vast majority of players just quit when the going gets tough. So make sure you understand it doesn't matter what the score is. Go out there and play the game the right way all the time, and college coaches will notice. And admit it, you've all done it, right? Number 3, warm-ups count. When college coaches are interested in you as a player, they're going to take every opportunity they can to see you perform. What you do in between innings is a chance for you to show off your skills. Many coaches will watch warm-ups just because they know it's a chance for them to get to see you get some action. If your team's got a really strong pitcher, you might only get 1 or 2 balls hit to you during the game that they watch, but while you're warming up for the game, they might get to see you field 5 or 6 or 7 ground balls. You get to see you catch 5 or 6 or 7 fly balls. And those are fly balls and ground balls just like the ones that the players hit to you in the games. College coaches can see your technique, they can see your form, they can see your arm strength, they can see your attitude, they can see your effort. So all those things count. Every time your coach hits you a ground ball before the game, you should field it with the same urgency that you would if you were fielding a ground ball in a game. And honestly, what I would tell you to do is talk to your coach and make sure in pregame warm-ups that they hit one right to you. And then they hit one that gives you a chance to show off your backhand. Then they hit one way to your glove side. So you get to show out for those college coaches that, hey, I've got some crazy range. I can get to balls. Because you might not get a chance to do it in the game, but you definitely get a chance to do it before the game starts. And I promise you, if you start to pay attention to this, you will notice college coaches standing someplace where it looks like they could be watching a game, but you can tell they also can see you. If they can see you, they're watching you. So remember, warm-ups count. Commandment number 4, be enthusiastic and pleasant around the ballpark. We talked earlier about how college coaches turn into FBI agents and spend a lot of time sneaking around trying to see what kind of person you really are and what kind of attitude you really have. This is a really clear-cut opportunity for you to show what kind of person you are. We see it all the time. Players that walk in from the parking lot like they're going to death row instead of going to play a softball game. They drag their bag in, shuffling their feet, tears in their eyes, like they would be happy to be any place but the ballpark. Well, if a college coach sees that, that's sending a very, very negative message. Because here's how we feel as coaches. You should love being at the ballpark. You should love playing the game. You should be excited every time you get to. And if you're that person who goes to the ballpark like you dread the idea of playing, that you're not enthusiastic about playing, again, you're sending a very negative message. The other thing that kids do all the time, players do all the time, which is also really, really dumb, they lose track of the fact that college coaches have a network. And we all have friends, we all have spies, we all have people we work with. It's not uncommon for me to have gotten a phone call from some other coach, big time program, some very large schools that couldn't be at a tournament they knew I was going to, that they would ask me to watch a player for them. And of course I would always do it. And the thing that I saw happen over and over and over again, especially when I was coaching at Tennessee Tech, I would be walking through the parking lot or walking through the park and see a player and pass by them, and they would look at me like I was nobody because they weren't interested in Tennessee Tech. But what they didn't know was the only reason I was there for that game was to watch them for Tennessee, which is a school that they were interested in. So they didn't even realize it, but they were sending a very negative message to somebody who had asked me to spend a couple of minutes watching a player for them while I was at the park. What message did I relay? The truth. And that truth was not helpful for that player. Now, again, it seems like one of those things that is common sense to have a good attitude and to display that attitude every chance you get. But let's be honest, we know that people don't always do it. And remember, college coaches are always communicating with each other. They're doing favors for each other. It's not uncommon for a coach who really likes a player, even if they don't have a spot for that player, to then communicate with their friends about helping that player find a spot. That happened to me dozens of times. Well, the player I'm most likely to help is the person that I know I can recommend with a clear conscience and know that they're going to be a good person and a good addition for that program. So remember, 4th commandment, be enthusiastic and pleasant around the ballpark. Number 5, run hard. If you're fast, part of your appeal to college coaches is your speed. When you get a chance to display that speed, you need to show it off. If you are a slow player, and speed's not one of your greatest attributes, you still want to show coaches that you're a hustler and that you play hard. What happens to most players? They hit a ground ball to the pitcher, and they barely make it 10 or 15 feet down the line, and they start heading for the dugout because they know they're going to be out. Well, if that college coach is there to watch you play, and they've got their stopwatch out, and they click that stopwatch when you start running, and you give up after 15 feet, guess what you've just shown them? That you're a quitter. And they have no idea whether you're fast or not because you stopped running after 3 or 4 steps. Are you going to be out? Probably. But remember this, that college coach might only be able to get that stopwatch out once today where you actually make contact with the ball. If you're going to be out by 20 feet, I don't care. You should run as hard as you can all the way through the base like your life depends on it. Because that college coach may not get another opportunity. And if you're a slower player, run hard. Show them that you're never going to give up. Put pressure on the defense by giving it all you've got as you run down that first baseline. Even if you're out, if you show that hustle and show that commitment, you're making a good impression. If you stop after a couple of steps because you hit it to the pitcher and you know you're going to be out, like I said before, what are you? you're a quitter. You might be a fast quitter, but nobody knows for sure. So, fifth commandment, run hard. Sixth commandment comes along with the same idea. Slide. I don't care if you're going to be out. Slide. If you're supposed to slide, slide. It's a very important skill. Here's one of the things I've never understood. Some of you have some of these crazy athletic, acrobatic, backdoor, inside-out slides. I don't know if you all have seen this, but a couple of years ago there was a film clip that almost broke the internet because there was a softball player who was going to be out by 5 feet. She got to home plate, the catcher was waiting to tag her, and she kind of somersaulted and flipped over the top of the catcher and touched home plate and was safe. Why? Because she wouldn't give up. Now, that's not a slide, but it's kind of the same idea. And not sliding when you're supposed to sends a really, really negative message. It's important for you to show off that skill if you're good at it. If you've got that backdoor slide, even if you don't need to, I would show it off. Okay? If you've got some special skills, take every opportunity you have to let college coaches see them. And again, don't be that person who could have been safe if they slid and have a college coach see it. Because again, if you're not going to play hard now, what makes them think that you'll play hard for them? It's not like a switch that we can flip on and off. So, sixth commandment is slide. Seventh commandment, infield and outfield warm-up throws count. What do we mean? You're the shortstop, and in between innings, the first baseman throws you a ground ball. It's a warm-up activity, right? Well, yeah, but you know what it also is? It's a chance for you to show your technique. It's a chance for you to show off your arm. Just like we want to ask our coach to hit balls to us that show off our abilities in pregame warm-ups, in between innings, I think we want to ask the first baseman to do the same thing. If I'm the shortstop, first ground ball right at me so I can show my technique and show off my arm. Next one, up the middle. Next one, deep in the hole. And all of a sudden now a college coach who's there to watch just saw me make 3 great plays in between innings. Nobody had to hit the ball. Nobody had to put the ball in play and allow me to make this play in a game. It was there for them to see, and it was easy for it to happen. So we want to take advantage of that every chance we get. And if you're lazy here, it just looks bad. Come on now, we all know what we're talking about. The shortstop who barely can even bend over, picks up the ball and throws it across the infield like it weighs 10 pounds. Again, looks lazy, is lazy. What makes that college coach think if you're lazy here that you won't be lazy for them? Again, same trap. Commandment number 8. This is one that I get some blowback from, some fight from people, but here's what I think. I think you should look the part. Look like a ball player. If you don't look like a ball player, I think some coaches are going to take that as a sign of disrespect and disrespect for the game. So we want to make sure that you wear your uniform right. And I mean the minute you get out of the car to the minute you leave the field, you should look like a ball player. Tuck in your shirt, pull your socks up. Those kinds of things are important. And there's other things that I think can send a negative message. Again, doesn't matter whether you think it's cool or not. Doesn't matter if you and your friends think it's cool or not. The person who you are trying to impress is a college coach. Some of those college coaches are older people. Some of them are very old. A lot of them have no idea why you think something's cool. So pink shoes, blue hair, those kinds of things certainly show your individualism, but you're always at risk when you do that of turning off a potential coach. Again, some college coaches love your individualism and they're going to remember that. It's going to make you stand out from the crowd. Others are going to cross you off the list because they think you look like a clown. Sorry, but that's just the truth. The second part of this is eye black. Some time ago, eye black became war paint. Now, of course, eye black is supposed to be worn under your eyes to help you see the ball better on a sunny day. Well, it's become this thing where kids are taking that eye black and basically doing war paint all over their face. They got 3 lines here and triangles there and stuff that's all this like crazy stuff. Is it cool? Maybe. But here's what I've heard from college coaching friends of mine. If this girl spent half as much time working on her game as she does working on her war paint, she might be pretty good. It's not something I only heard once, so if people are saying that, you have to make sure that you're paying attention to that. So, commandment number 8 is look like a ball player. Commandment number 9, walks do not show us much. So why do walks not show a college coach much? Because at the college level, the pitchers are too good. Are there some walks? Of course. But a player who cannot hit will not get recruited. If your on-base percentage is ridiculously high because you get walked a lot, people will notice that, but they still are going to doubt that you have the ability to hit. If they don't think you can hit, they will not recruit you, and it's just that simple. The flip side of it is, if you can hit, you know they'll find a place on the field for you. So while walking helps your team win, it does not always help you get recruited. So we want you to be aware of that. Now, that doesn't mean you should swing at everything, because swinging wildly and being crazy up at the plate is going to scare some coaches away too. But staying aggressive and hitting pitches that are reasonable, that you can get a good swing at, even if they're slightly out of the strike zone, sends a very clear and very positive message. So remember, the 9th commandment is walks do not show us much. I've written a couple of blogs about this topic, that a walk is not as good as a hit. That's one of those classic gems you hear at the ballpark all the time. Hey, a walk's as good as a hit. Now, a walk is better than an out, but it's not as good as a hit. Okay? All right. Number 10, the 10th commandment is communicate. Sometimes when I'm at the ballpark, the silence is deafening. The team that I'm helping coach now aggravates me sometimes because they fall into this trap of assuming that everybody else on the field knows what's going on. Communication is an important part of this game. If 2 players are communicating together, it guarantees that they're less likely to make mistakes. If 3 or 4 or 5 players are communicating together, definitely eliminates the possibility for them to make mistakes. The other thing that communication does is it shows leadership. Now, I don't mean just cheerleading. Now, cheerleading is better than silence. But what we're really looking for, and what we hope you will start to do, is communication that impacts the game and the way you play it. If you're the shortstop, talking to the second baseman about what your duties are. If you're the third baseman, first baseman, pitcher, talking about bunts and bunt coverages and who's making plays. If you're the outfielder and the shortstop, talking about cutoffs and relays, those kinds of things. That type of communication makes your team better, and it stands out. Remember, we talked about it at the very beginning, stand out from the crowd. Being a travel ball or high school age player who communicates well will make you stand out, period. Okay, so 11th commandment, play the game the right way. We've talked about this idea several times about standing out from the crowd. As much as we wish everyone understood this concept, playing the game the right way is a lot harder than people want to give it credit for. It means that you're hustling all the time. It means that you're always on point. It means that you're always paying attention. It means that you're always working hard, whether it's in the field, in the dugout, or in warm-ups. It means that you're going to cover bases and back up plays. And it means you're going to be aggressive. If you do all those things, again, you will stand out from the crowd. If you choose not to do those things, you blend in. What happens to blenders? They disappear. When they disappear, college coaches stop paying attention. Play the game the right way. Number 12 is throwing and catching. Here's one of the problems with the game of fast pitch softball. Most players come up through the ranks thinking of throwing as a warm-up activity. The reality is, throwing the ball and catching the ball is the most important skill in our game. If you do not catch the ball well, if you do not throw the ball well, everything else about your game is going to fall apart. It's the most fundamental skill, and it is a skill that all college coaches pay attention to. If you are not a good thrower and a good catcher of the ball, you are going to drop on people's recruiting lists very, very dramatically. It's a sign of a lack of conscientiousness about your training. We want to make sure that we are training to be good throwers and good receivers of the ball. The bottom line is, if you are a very poor thrower, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be a college softball player. I've had exactly one player in my entire coaching career that I recruited that was a very poor thrower. And part of the reason she was poor at throwing was injuries that she had had that had messed up her shoulder. But having said that, I still recruited her for one very simple reason. She could hit. In her 4-year career, she hit 48 home runs. Because of those 48 home runs, I could live with the fact that she was not going to throw anybody out. Now, we did a lot of things in our defense to hide the fact that she was not a very good thrower, and that helped us quite a bit, but she was the exception. Other than that, every other player that I've ever recruited, and I think any other player that I've ever heard of being recruited, was a highly skilled thrower, and catcher. I know it seems fundamental. It is. It's the most fundamental skill, but it's the most valuable. You need to work on it. Okay, the 13th commandment is social media. Obviously, social media is everywhere these days. College coaches now use social media as a way to communicate with players that they're interested in recruiting, but more importantly, they use it as a tool to find out about the players that they might recruit. Here's what I will tell you about social media. Be careful what you post, be careful what you say, be careful how you act. I know that there's several of these forms of social media that it supposedly disappears after a certain amount of time, but I have a very strong inclination that once it's out there forever, and you never know for sure who might have access to it. And those things that you say in the heat of the moment, when you're angry, when you're frustrated, when you're heartbroken, can come back to haunt you later. So be very careful about what you say and do online. Pictures that you post, things that you say are going to haunt you if you're not careful. So some things that I see that I think have hurt players, and one of them is this thing called cyberbullying, where kids are kind of picking on each other and beating each other up. If a college coach sees that kind of activity from you, I think that's the kiss of death. Mean tweets, negative posts, things that you're saying social media-wise about coaches, about teammates, about opponents, again, are things that can be perceived as being very negative and a sign of immaturity. And remember, college coaches get to pick who they coach. Are they going to pick somebody who they can look back at your social media history and see you blasting your high school coach, or blasting your high school teammates, or blasting an umpire in some way that's going to be a negative reflection on their program if you do those same kinds of things when you're on their team? So we got to make sure that we understand social media, while it's a great tool, can also be a great detriment. Be sure you think twice before you hit send. And the last of the commandments, the 14th, this one is something that we talk about often. We've talked about it already today. Do what it takes to stand out from the crowd. This is the biggest mistake that I see players making. Make sure that you're not the next one. Go all out all the time. Give it all you've got all the time. If I'm the college coach that's watching you play, you want to give me this impression. I can't live without you. I need you on my team right now. I want you on my team. The do what it takes to stand out mindset will help you immensely as a softball player who wants to get recruited. But guess what, kids? It's going to help you every place in your life. When you're applying for that first real job, who gets the job? The person who stands out or the person who blends in? When it's time for you to get a promotion, who stands out, who blends in? All those kinds of things that you learn from being a take charge and do what it takes to stand out personality in softball recruiting is going to help you for the rest of your life. So those are the 14 commandments. Please take stock. Think about it for a second. How many of the 14 have you made that same mistake? My guess is for most players that I talk to, it's somewhere in the 8, 9, or 10 range. If you're making that many mistakes and your phone's not ringing or you're not getting emails, rethink what you're doing at the ballpark and the things that you're doing very, very quickly. You can fix it, but you've been on the wrong road. You need to stop and turn back around.